let's get very straight about this, and I hope you report this part. This audit has never, ever been about Trump or the election.
Welcome back to Square Off. Senate President Karen Fann authorized the unprecedented partisan review of Maricopa County's 2020 vote. She still insists the review had nothing to do with Donald Trump. Documents obtained by the Arizona Republic tell a very different story. We're back with investigative reporter Robert Anglen of the Arizona Republic. Karen Fann found Doug Logan through a man named Phil Waldron. Who is Phil Waldron and how did he know Logan? Because this begins to get at the whole stop the steal part of this story.
Correct. The whole issue behind the audit is that it began months before Karen Fann hired Doug Logan. It was part of a coordinated plot to attack election results in an effort to overturn the election, not just in Arizona, but in Michigan and Georgia. And Logan was part of that from the start. Waldron is a Trump operative. He's a Trump supporter who had incredible access. He was invited to White House meetings, and he actually reached out to Karen Fann to encourage him to hire Trump. Waldron was involved
to hire Logan.
Pardon me, to hire Logan.
Yeah.
And he was actually involved in a company that was trying to get the audit contract, but it raised too many concerns because of some of their social media activity and some of their allegations of election fraud. So Karen Fann wasn't going to hire them. She wanted to hire somebody else, but she relied on that group to tell her who to do it.
And the question we still don't know the answer to is why? The why. Because as you point out, it's not like Karen Fann just decided to do an audit one day. This was, as you say, in the works long before.
Yeah, this was all cooked up at Linwood's, what they call the Tamalti plantation. He has plantation properties, and a nexus of Trump operatives met there just a couple of weeks after the election, and Logan stayed there for 6 weeks, interacting with all members of Stop the Steal, Sidney Powell, and he talks about it in a deposition. And then he's enlisted by other Trump operatives to start doing audits in other states and to examine election equipment in other states, which he's now been named as a criminal co-conspirator.
And these are names that have become more familiar to us or reminded of them because of all the indictments, charges against Donald Trump in the cases in Georgia, a case in Georgia in particular. Both Logan and Waldron have been implicated in some way in other states very recently.
Oh, both in Michigan and Georgia. Their names have come up. Logan is unindicted co-conspirator number 25, individual number 25. In the Georgia indictments, he was also considered he was named in the Michigan in criminal investigation, although he was not indicted there as well. And what he was doing was going to these places and taking apart, dismantling. They said he was holed up in a hotel room, dismantling election equipment that was illegally seized by Trump's operatives.
Let's take a look at some of the text messages. Here's a series from Logan to OAN personality and Trump go-between Christina Bobb in April 2021. He says, I left my house November 14th, didn't come home until Christmas Eve. I've been working on it nonstop since then, the whole time. I've done more all-nighters in the last 3-4 months than I did in my total time in college. What exactly was Doug Logan doing from November 14th, just a few days after the 2020 presidential election, until Christmas?
He was setting up the audit and setting up his election, his attempts to overturn elections on behalf of Trump.
And let's go next message that shows Logan in a text exchange with Seth Keshel. He's a military veteran and leading Stop the Steal voice. Keshel asks, is this going to be enough to show the world it was all a fraud? Logan responds, if we get approval to do what we want to do, yes, it should. Does that show motive, as police might say?
It shows exactly what they intended to do from the start, which was, by the way, to launch an audit, maybe not to find the exact vote count, but to raise enough doubt about the election that it could cast it into doubt. And then that plays parallel to the fake elector scheme.
And among the trove of messages are at least two showing Trump was paying very close attention, maybe even breathing down Logan's neck. Christina Bobb texted Logan, had a detailed discussion with 45 today, 45 being the 45th president. We're losing people, Doug. We need a good statement to encourage our base. I'll spare you the details, but we're losing people. What was that about? How do you read that?
That's both about money and about the fact that Doug Logan wasn't finding what he was supposed to find.
And 1 month into the review, an audit funder exchanged messages with Logan. Any total count numbers you can give me for Abby to give to Trump. We don't know who Abby is, but what does that tell you?
Well, Trump was paying hyper close attention to the Arizona audit. He needed it. He needed this state to be overturned. And whether or not that was through the audit itself or through the questions raised by the audit.
So again, you know, Karen Fann insists the audit had nothing to do with Trump. This is just a sliver of all the messages out there. Is it conclusive that this was really all about Trump?
There is absolutely no doubt that this was about Trump, that it was orchestrated by his allies, and that it was carried out by his allies, including Doug Logan. And let's make no mistake, what the audit found, the audit didn't find anything. The numbers, Logan in these text messages starts admitting that he can't even read his own numbers. They can't tally the hand count. So all those people that spent weeks in the Veterans Memorial Coliseum counting ballots on the Lazy Susan tables, day after day putting tick marks on sheets of paper, those ultimately couldn't be counted. And that comes up in private discussions that were revealed in the text messages we got.
And you know, John Brakey, who was a Democrat watching the process, he said something along the lines of, I feel bad for these folks. They've been misled and they don't even know it. And so there is some sympathy for those folks who did all that work.
Well, yeah, they were volunteers. They were being pulled out of different places all over the county and told that they were going to help save democracy. What they were doing was helping to overturn democracy, and they didn't know it. And all of their work was meaningless if you read the text messages. Logan couldn't read the numbers. He even called them screwy at one point.
Screwy.
Screwy. We can't make sense of our own data.
Now, Karen Fann wasn't available for an interview to respond to my questions. In a text message exchanged with me last week, Fann remained defiant. Here's one passage, quote, our job as the Senate was to verify the election laws were followed, nothing more, nothing less, and we proved there were many mistakes. Help me understand why the media has taken so much pain to not report all the facts. It appears their only goal was to attack a process when they should have been asking the same questions. Karen Fann's been very consistent with that response. She also suggested I check with Ken Bennett, who was Senator Ken Bennett, who's an audit spokesman, for his view. I think you've spoken to Ken Bennett.
I have several times, and Mr. Bennett is of the impression that he was misled about the audit. He was enlisted as a way to he was a liaison between the Senate and the public, and he now regrets that based on my interviews with him, and he says that he was misled about what the audit was trying to do. He says he's never seen evidence to support the numbers that Doug Logan came up with, so he has to take it on faith. Now, Karen Fann also needs to change the record about her statements. She keeps saying that this is about the county trying to hide. We're past that. What we're asking now is, how did Logan become involved in this? How did she hire him? Why did she hire him? She said he was an expert. She said he was well qualified. It turns out he wasn't. He couldn't do the job, but she will not answer a question. That question, why did you pick Doug Logan?
We've talked about criminal cases related to the 2020 election. Has there been any discussion of charges being filed in this case?
There is an investigation by the Attorney General's office. It's focal point.
Attorney General Chris Mays.
Attorney General Chris Mays announced about 2 months ago that she was investigating both the fake elector scheme and possibly issues tied to the audit. Whether that results in criminal charges is anybody's guess, but we're waiting.
And if you're wondering what happened to the audit report, the answer is nothing. That's a whole other story involving former Attorney General Mark Brnovich, but the investigation went absolutely nowhere. Robert Anglen, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for your hard work.
Well, thank you. It's been a team effort.
Okay.